Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Cleanup continues on a crash downtown 1100 East at 3rd South. Rekindle adventure in a place everyone connects with nature. Cedar City, Bryan Head. Shopping, dining, museums, spring skiing, tubing, hiking, biking, disc golf, and much more. Level up your adventure. Visit cedarcity.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Okay, SL weather, sunshine, 70 degrees today, tomorrow 73, with clouds building up. Then much cooler Friday and Saturday with a storm moving in. Right now, 63 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, on the presidential politics front, there were 5 big primary elections yesterday. You may not have heard a whole lot about that because for most people, the headline was it was a pretty easy, breezy, kind of drafty day when it comes to presidential politics. No real surprises or challenges. But if you get beyond the headlines, were there some things that both the current president and the former president should be worried about despite their landslide victories yesterday? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Of course, there were no real challenges to either the former or the current president on their quest to become the nominees for their political parties for the 2024 election cycle. But there's a lot underneath the headlines that is worth looking at that should cause a little pause and maybe even some concern for both former President Trump and current President Joe Biden. And to help us break all of that down, really pleased to have back on the show Stephen Shepard, Politico's senior campaign and elections editor and chief polling analyst. And Stephen, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Great piece, as always, and you really got underneath the headlines, the easy stuff, to get to. What are some of the concerns for both of these campaigns as they start marching towards that general election? And let's start with the current president, Joe Biden. What are some of the things under the numbers that maybe the Biden campaign should be or could be a little worried about?
Yeah, so, you look at 4 states held primaries yesterday, but I'm looking mostly at Wisconsin here because that is, of course, a key general election swing state. And Joe Biden got 87% of the vote, which is the vast majority of Democratic primary votes. But we're also looking at, the 8% of Democratic primary voters who voted for a line on the ballot that says uninstructed delegation. It's similar to the uncommitted push that we've seen in other states so far. Dean Phillips, the Minnesota congressman who dropped out a month ago, got 3% of the vote. Those are small numbers, but in a state like Wisconsin, which was decided within a percentage point in the last 2 presidential elections, one by Biden in 2020 and Donald Trump in 2016, this is a place where those sorts of margins could matter. And if you look at where the non-Biden votes in the Democratic primary were primarily concentrated, it is in places like around Madison, which has become essentially the Democratic majority maker in a number of recent elections in Wisconsin, whether it is Biden's 2020 victory, Democratic Governor Tony Evers' re-election bid in 2022, a very closely covered race for the state Supreme Court in last spring. This is where Democrats have made their majorities. And, if you look between the lines, there is a little bit of dissatisfaction with President Biden in places like that right now. And we're seeing that in other states around the country, too, but obviously with a close focus on Wisconsin last night.
Yeah, and Wisconsin is going to be a real battleground. I think maybe one of the most important ones as we get towards the general election cycle. And as you mentioned, there are about 8% in this uninstructed kind of the protest vote. So almost 48,000 people actually showed up and voted that way. So I always find that instructive in terms of someone who didn't just not show up or not vote, but did vote and really sent that message, the 3%. So 11% total. Again, that could be interesting to see what those voters do come the fall. Will they stay home? I don't think any of them are really heading towards the Donald Trump camp. But if they just stayed home, that could be an impact. And you also pointed out in your piece kind of the same scenario with former President Trump, in that there were double-digit numbers who were either voting for Nikki Haley or someone else. Break that down for us.
Right. No, Nikki Haley got actually Donald Trump only got 79% of the vote in Wisconsin compared to Biden's 89%. So you have roughly 1 in 5 Republican primary voters, people who showed up to vote, like you said, and took the effort and voted for 13% for Nikki Haley, or 3% for Ron DeSantis, or 2% for uninstructed, or 2% for Chris Christie. Candidates who have long since dropped out. Republicans still in Wisconsin went and voted for these other candidates. Now, the one reason why, even though the anti-Trump Republican numbers are larger in these results than the anti-Biden Democratic numbers, that might be a little bit greater concern for President Biden, despite that 10-point gap, is, I mentioned Madison and Dane County.
Right.
That is where we saw the greatest percentage for uninstructed of any county, a key Democratic county. It was also Nikki Haley's best county. She got 24% of the vote there. This is a place that, for all intents and purposes, Donald Trump, the Republican Party in the Trump era, has kind of already lost. Think about cities and, some of the best educated cities or best educated suburbs in the country that have drifted so much toward Democrats in recent years, especially in the Trump era. These are places where the Republican Party is already struggling. So to see votes there, a lot of votes there for Nikki Haley, isn't necessarily surprising. These aren't the kinds of places where Donald Trump's going to need to run up the score to win. These are the places, though, where Joe Biden's going to have to build those majorities. And to the extent that that's where even if it's more limited, the opposition to him within his own party sits, I think that's a bit of a warning sign.
Yeah, so interesting. And let's throw one final factor in there, and that is someone like a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in terms of, again, these places that will be very close. How are you seeing that build, and is that a place where some of these uninstructed, uncommitted, or voting for people who aren't even in the race anymore, will they be inclined to turn to someone like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., or will they slowly work their way back into the Democrat or Republican Party?
I mean, I do think you hit on it. The people showing up to vote uninstructed in the Democratic primary, if, for example, they're doing it as dissatisfaction with President Biden's policy toward Israel and Hamas and the war in the Middle East, they're not likely to line up behind Donald Trump, who would probably go even further in supporting Israel in its war. Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good match. But some of these third-party candidates, whether it is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or Jill Stein or Cornel West or a Libertarian nominee, might be a better fit. And I think that, if you're President Biden, you're especially worried about people like Cornel West and Jill Stein, who would certainly draw from your left flank, which is where the opposition in these primaries seems to be coming from, as opposed to on the Republican side. You're not seeing the problems for Donald Trump are not among base voters. They're among voters that he's probably already lost in the previous two elections.
Yeah. Great insight, great analysis, and great writing, as always. Stephen Shepard, Politico's senior campaign and elections editor, also chief polling analyst. Stephen, thanks for weighing in today. Long way to go on all of this, but so interesting to get underneath the headlines and look at some of these trends that both campaigns are going to have to deal with. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Definitely. Thanks for having me.
All right, again, that's Stephen Shepard from Politico, and some really good analysis there, because you could, if you just looked at the headlines, you'd just say, oh, landslide for President Biden, landslide for former President Trump, easy primary days for both, and that would be the end, and that's what they would want you to believe. But underneath that, there's a lot of hand-wringing going on, both in the Biden campaign in terms of some of these who showed up to vote and didn't vote for him, voted for uninstructed or uncommitted. And then on the Republican side, you had those that showed up to vote. They made the effort, but voted for Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or Chris Christie, people who have been out of the race for a long time. Both campaigns have a lot of work to do before we get to the first Tuesday of November. We'll keep tracking it all here on Inside Sources. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan Sea Salt Body Wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Gabby.
Hey, Gabby. It's Jennifer Coolidge. Hi. I'm so glad I reached you at 2 a.m.
Oh, of course. Anyone with a Discover card can call and talk to a real person 24/7. Now, how can I help?
Yeah, I used my Discover card to buy these yellow pleather pajamas, and I'm just not sure I'm pulling them off.
24/7 U.S.-based customer service. It pays to Discover. Limitations apply. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard.
Artillery fire in Europe.
Russia launching its biggest missile attack.
Gunfire maimed soldiers and civilians in the Middle East.
Humanitarian crisis.
And at home, we can barely stand in the same room.
We've never been more divided.
This spring, start over. The 194th Annual General Conference of The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This Saturday and Sunday at 10. In your car at 102.7 FM and 1160 AM. On every smart speaker and streaming live on the app for KSL News Radio.
You wouldn't know it, but most financial advisors are put in a box. I'm Jeff Jr. from Trajan Wealth, and I want to provide you a little insight about financial advisors. Most financial advisors have to sell what their company requires them to sell, and many advisors have to only adhere to what's called a suitability standard. A suitability standard is a limited standard of care, not requiring what's sold to be best just suitable. Advisors with this loose standard often have limited investment and product selection. Trajan Wealth is held to a fiduciary standard, which is the highest standard of care in the advisory business. And that's just one of the many reasons we have billions of dollars under our care and attract clients from other advisors. Raise your standards today and call Trajan Wealth. Call 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600.
Advisory services offered through Trajan Wealth, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
When it comes to your electrical system, do you know the warning signs to look for? What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and it's okay if you don't know, but here are a few things that you might not even realize could be a sign of a bigger problem. Wall plates that are hot to the touch, discoloration around switches or outlets, if you hear crackling or popping or buzzing around switches or outlets, a breaker that trips a lot, switches that feel loose when you operate them, if your lights dim or flicker when a major appliance comes on, if your plugs fall out of the wall easily. You know, you're not supposed to have to bend the prongs out on a plug just to get it to stay in the wall. If you notice any of these things, you should consider having a licensed electrician check your system out. If you don't know anyone, Any Hour Services has put together a radio-only special for any homeowners listening. One of our licensed electricians will perform a comprehensive electrical inspection and give you a full written report for only $29. But you have to mention this ad when you call. To schedule your comprehensive electrical inspection by a licensed electrician for only $29, call Any Hour Services at 801-443-7300. That's 801-443-7300. Any Hour Services.
Hey guys, do you know your T-level? Revive Men's Health here in Salt Lake City is helping you take that first step toward better health and enhanced intimacy with a free testosterone level test, exam, and consultation. Plus, for this month only, qualified patients can kickstart their treatment with a free supply of ED medication. Call Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777. Or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
I'm Dave Cawley, investigative journalist and host of the podcast Cold. In October of 1985, a woman named Cherie Warren left work at a busy Salt Lake City office
to meet her estranged husband at a downtown auto dealership.
She never made it home. Cherie's car surfaced weeks later in Las Vegas.
In the parking lot of a hotel casino.
No one knows how it got there.
Strange. It was strange.
Both Cherie's estranged husband and her boyfriend raised suspicion for investigators.
I kind of thought that he might have done something.
But no arrests were ever made. In Cold Season 3, we dig into double lives, make new connections in the case, and examine the difficulty raised by reasonable doubt.
We want answers just as much as anyone else.
They have creeps like that now too, so nothing's changed.
That's the new Cold Season 3, The Search for Cherie. now available anywhere you get your podcasts.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Draper police are trying to find the person who is using a drone to look into the windows of houses in a hotel. Second, the Salt Lake City Council looking at new measures to strengthen protection for historic buildings after the old Fifth Ward Meeting House was partially demolished last weekend. And third, shareholders of the Walt Disney Company have rejected an attempt to take control of the company pushed by an activist investor. Right now, 63 degrees and sunny. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and there's a lot of things going along, a lot of chatter, a lot of clamor around social media these days. And, of course, the social media companies are going to war over their consumers' data. That's a big issue that's making its way all the way to the halls of Congress. The question is, how do you really regulate private companies? How do you deal with organizations like TikTok? And the big question is, of course, you have to hit that agree button to terms and conditions. What's that all about, and what does that actually do? And so we want to unpack that a little bit. And someone who is great at unpacking from big headlines to what's underneath and what matters is Peter Coy. He's a writer for the opinion section of the New York Times. He has a newsletter on economics and adjacent topics. And Peter, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks very much. I appreciate your being on. It sounds like you have good weather there in Salt Lake.
It is a beautiful day. It's going to snow, I think, before the week is over, but we are going to enjoy about 70 degrees today. So we'll take it. So help us get underneath this whole thing around, what is consent and what does that allow a lot of these companies to do with our data? In fact, we were chuckling yesterday. Someone had pointed out to me that the Hertz rental car agreement that you have to click agree to is 8,592 words, about twice the length of the Constitution. And for some of these social media companies, it's kind of the same. We all click agree, and what are we actually agreeing to?
We're agreeing to a lot of things we probably wish we hadn't agreed to, but we just don't have the patience for it. And I don't. I've written about this topic before. I'm well aware that I shouldn't be doing it, but when the time comes, I just can't be bothered. So I click yes like everybody else.
And then what does that allow? So what does that look like in terms of kind of the consent that we're giving these companies as it relates to our data?
Right. Very often we're allowing them to provide the data, for example, to advertisers. So we get targeted advertising. It's not nefarious necessarily. Some people might say, well, that's fine. I want targeted advertising. That's more useful to me. The issue is when it's stuff that you'd rather not be shared. So this is where it gets interesting. I talked to Joseph Turo. He's a professor at University of Pennsylvania's Annenberg School for Communication. He said true consent means two things, understanding and autonomy. So you can't really consent to something unless you understand it. That's the understanding part. And second, you have to have true autonomy to consent. The idea that you could choose not to, and that would be a legitimate choice. If you feel like you really have no alternative but to click yes, then that's really not an autonomous choice.
Yeah, exactly. And so as you look at how that is playing out, and some of the obviously the big headlines of late have been around TikTok in terms of where does that data actually go? Who gets that portion of your data? Does that end up in the Chinese government control somewhere, or where does that play out? How are you seeing this play out in terms of law and what this should look like in terms of legislation? What are the remedies here?
Yeah, I think that there's this whole idea of caveat emptor, buyer beware, that, hey, we're all rational people and we make our choices of what we want to do. But as we've been discussing here, that's not a good representation of the way the world really works. So another person at Penn named Tess Wilkinson Ryan, I also interviewed, she's at the law school, said, there are times when you simply should not be allowed even to sign away certain rights because you're going to do it without thinking about it. The government should actually prohibit certain forms of, example, release of personal data, so to protect you from yourself, I guess is the way you just think about it. Or a recent example is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau put a cap on most credit card late fees. It's $8 now. So in the past, the bank could just, or whoever the credit card issuer is, should have a much higher late fee, which you wouldn't even think about when you were signing up for your credit card. Now, they simply can't do that. So that's protecting people from themselves. And I think there's a role for doing that sometimes.
Yeah. You also pointed out in your piece, part of that conversation with Wilkinson Ryan and the book she published last year, Foolproof, how fear of playing the sucker shapes ourselves and the social order. What did you learn about that? I think that is a fascinating space.
I think so, too. So as soon as I heard the title of the book, Foolproof, I said, how can you argue if you think people don't want to be played for suckers that they're allowing this to happen to themselves? Aren't they kind of being played for suckers? And he said, here's what happens. This is her theory. And I think it makes sense. Just see if you can identify with this yourself, or maybe the people out in the audience listening. Okay, so you say to yourself, well, on the one hand, I did not agree to that, or I didn't think I had agreed to that. I maybe made a mistake and accidentally agreed to that. And so I feel like a sucker, but I don't want to admit that I was played for suckers. So I'll tell the world, well, I stand by it. Yeah, sure, I made that decision on my own, win some, lose some. And of course, that plays right into companies' hands. That's the way they want you to react.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like jazzing out your living room with a brand new big screen TV, and then that was a bad choice. So then you buy some speakers to justify the bad screen, the big investment there. At least that's the way you justify it with your spouse, I think, in terms of
exactly.
But I think that is an interesting thing because one, I think she's right. I think we no one wants to be the sucker, and then we don't want to admit when maybe we were, because we were either in too big a hurry to get onto that social media site that we couldn't be bothered with reading the actual agreement. So we click agree, and away we go on our social media scroll. Meanwhile, we've consented for all kinds of data and information to be used, passed along, sold, and a host of other things.
Yep, precisely, yeah. It's a great topic, and it's not going away. There's always going to be this pressure that the websites want to monetize. There's an old expression: if you're not paying for the product, that means you're the product. Classic example is Google search. Google search is free, but of course, Google makes money by the ads that appear on the website, so you are the product. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's legit. That's legit business, but just be aware that that's what's going on.
Yeah. I think that's an important piece for all of us to keep in mind. And I think it also encourages us to just slow down just a little bit. I think often in our race and chase, we don't really think through all of those things and what the downstream ramifications might be. Is there anything else that you're watching in terms of trends in this space, Peter, either legislatively or in the courts, that might give us some indication of where this all goes next? Because as you said, it's not going away.
Right. I think we're going to see stuff going on with the Biden administration has made this a priority, so we can expect Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and other branches of the government to be trying to crack down. The Federal Trade Commission and the Justice Department are both pursuing lawsuits in which some of this comes up, these antitrust suits against the big tech companies, legislation in Congress, and then you're going to see some court decisions as well.
Fantastic. Great insight. Peter Coy is a writer for the opinion section of the New York Times, has a newsletter on economics. You want to make sure you check that out today as well. Peter, thanks for helping us unpack that. Make sure we don't hit okay or agree until we actually know that we agree. Thanks for helping us unpack it.
Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Again, that's Peter Coy for the New York Times. And how often do we do that? We don't read it. We rush past it. We click okay. And then we shouldn't be surprised that our data is being sold and used and manipulated and manipulating us. I think Peter got it exactly right. You are the product. If there's not a fee, like on a Google search, you are the product, and what you put in there, you're going to get served up and you're probably going to buy, and it will benefit the big company. Those are all things we've got to be thinking about and maybe rethinking about as we move it all forward. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom of the hour news. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, we're going to look at the Friends on the Supreme Court. We'll talk about that coming up next. Stick around.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Taiwan has experienced its strongest earthquake in 25 years. It was a 7.4 magnitude. And how does that compare to the 2020 quake that shook Utah?
Magnitudes are logarithmic, so it's 10 times greater than a 6, 100 times greater than a 5, which is what the Magna quake was. So this would be 100 times greater than what we experienced with that quake.
Wade Matthews with Be Ready Utah says if we do experience an earthquake that strong, the building will be shaking so badly you likely won't be able to move and you'll just have to ride it out. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A Palestinian-American doctor who spent time in Gaza walked out of a meeting with President Biden at the White House today. Dr. Thayer Ahmad doesn't think the White House has done enough to protect civilians in Gaza during the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. The head of World Central Kitchen, Chef Jose Andres, wrote a scathing op-ed in the New York Times after an Israeli airstrike killed 7 of his workers. World Central Kitchen has been providing meals to thousands of civilians in Gaza. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average down on the day right now, 86 points. The NASDAQ is up about 5. And our KSL weather, sunny day, but some clouds moving in tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
News doesn't just mean information or dates.
It's the story of our local history being told in real time.
Be a part of the story. This is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
We hope to be a part of your story. We have you covered on KSL News Radio.
And now another no-brainer money-saving tip from Progressive.
That doesn't sound good.
The paper shredder's jammed, but I think I fixed it.
Oh, well, try shredding these $50 bills then.
Seems like it's working.
Better try another $400.
Stop. Instead of using money, use regular paper. And here's a better tip from Progressive on how not to waste money. Don't pay too much for car insurance. Drivers who switch and save could save hundreds. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Tax Talk with Straight Talk.
You give and you give. This tax season, you get with Straight Talk Wireless. You get a reliable 5G network and unlimited data and a new Samsung Galaxy A15 for just $99. So you can give your janky phone to your kid. Yeah! Good talk.
Switch to Straight Talk for plans starting as low as $25 a line per month for 4 lines. Find us at Walmart and StraightTalk.com. For network management practices, visit StraightTalk.com. Device offer ends 4/14/24. In-store activation on single Silver Unlimited plan or higher required. Family plan discount with 4 lines all on the Silver Unlimited plan. Taxes and fees apply.
Introducing Peach Doors and Windows. Are you ready to upgrade your home with stunning new doors but are overwhelmed with how to begin? Peach Doors is here to make the entire process smooth and stress-free. Visit their showroom to see their wide selection of wood doors, durable fiberglass, energy-efficient aluminum, oversized glass bifold doors, and so much more. It's not just about looks, it's about durability and security to protect what matters most. Let them help you find the perfect match for your home, budget, and personal style. Visit their showroom and see for yourself. No pushy sales tactics, only guidance from their experienced staff. No inflated markups just to offer so-called discounts. See their 5-star reviews where customers rate them on their attention to detail through every step of the sale and installation process. Amazing home transformations begin with windows and doors. Serving Logan to St. George, just Google Peach Building to see for yourself.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We do have a crash being cleared at 13th East and 1000 South. And also a heads up from North Salt Lake City. There is a road closure due to a downed power line at Center Street and Main Street. They're asking you to avoid the area. For fabulous food, atmosphere, and tradition, visit Five Alls Restaurant. Five Alls offers memorable dining experiences for any occasion. Birthdays, anniversaries, proms, graduation, engagement, and more. Visit fivealls.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, sunshine, 70 degrees today, tomorrow 73, but with some clouds building up. Friday and Saturday a lot cooler with a storm moving in. 63 and sunny right now. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, the role of the Supreme Court of the United States of America continues to become more and more important and garner more and more attention, filled with more and more contention. The Supreme Court is one of the most important and consequential roles in American government. Of course, interpreting the law, fighting on the forefront of the most contentious issues of our time, has really led to a lot of politics. And it has caused the court to be politicized in ways I don't think were intended, and even vilified by far too many Americans today. So the bigger question and the learning, I think, the insight and instruction we should get from the court is, how do the members of the Supreme Court actually do their job? And what can we learn from that? And I think one of the things that we have been talking about over the last couple of months, and one that is becoming even more clear and more sharp in my view, is that relationships and listening that are modeled by the members of the Supreme Court are a really good model for the rest of us in terms of what actually matters and how you can actually be more persuasive. So as we look to the court, there was just a brilliant piece by former Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer. It's actually titled, "The Supreme Court I Served On Was Made Up of Friends." Now, in a highly politicized world, in a very fractured political system, many people see the court as kind of the last big battle space. But to the members of the court, they see it quite differently, and they see each other quite differently. And while their views, their jurisprudence is very different from one another, the way they interpret the Constitution and the law is vastly different across the spectrum, yet they see each other as friends. And they have real conversations. And they have real conversations not just about work, but about a host of other things that should also be very instructive to us. In this piece in the New York Times by former Justice Stephen Breyer, he talked about this. He said, in my tenure, it meant that we could listen to one another, which increased the chances of agreement or compromise. It means that the court will work better for the nation that it serves. And then he wondered if justices who disagree so profoundly can do so respectfully, perhaps it's possible for our politically divided country to do the same. And we're going to come back to this a little bit later in the show and talk about some of the examples that Stephen Breyer shared about his colleagues on the court that were vastly different from one another, but who became friends. And because they were friends first, they could usually get to the best conversation last. And that's in the best interest of the country. And so we'll dig into that a little bit. I want to go back to conversations that were held a little earlier this year, back in February. There were two Supreme Court justices, Amy Coney Barrett and Sonia Sotomayor, who spoke first at the National Governors Association. And, of course, they were brought together by a good friend of the show who also used to be a judge, Justice Thomas Griffith, who served on the D.C. Circuit Court. And he facilitated this conversation with Amy Coney Barrett and Sonia Sotomayor. And they talked about disagreeing with each other while still remaining and maintaining a relationship of collegiality and their own personal work ethics. So let's start with Justice Barrett, who spoke about having difficult conversations that the Supreme Court has to have on a daily basis.
We're in that conference room and it's just the 9 of us. When you're in the flesh and you're having very difficult conversations, You can't just get up and storm away from your computer screen, and you can't just walk away, and you give one another, the benefit of the doubt. You give one another, you assume the best, as my mother used to say to me, and now I say to my kids, you assume the best of the other person, and it makes those difficult conversations much easier to have. Because, we are a pluralistic society. That's what the First Amendment protects, our First Amendment freedoms. And if we can't survive by tolerating differences and learning to compromise and learning to allow one another to express other views, we're going to sink. We won't be able to get anything done as a country.
Justice Sotomayor talked about the necessity to get along with each other while carrying out the work. A healthy co-working relationship is a vital piece of how the work of the nation actually gets done.
We still have disagreements on the court, and we still have fundamental disagreements in how you approach issues. And we don't compromise on those things, but there are ways to take the edge off the disagreement, like narrowing an opinion, deciding to leave a question that's not before you for another case. There are so many things that you can do to bring the temperature down and to have you functioning together as a group to getting something done that has a benefit in the law. And so, for me, collegiality is at the center of our ability to work together, where when we disagree, our pens are sharp, but on a personal level, we never translate that into our relationships with one another.
I love that framing. When it comes to their disagreements, their pens are sharp, and they're going to make their case, and they are going to express what they believe. But they never allow that to cross over and inhibit their ability to have a personal relationship. I think it's one of the real challenges of our time is we've allowed so many things to become so transactional that we've forgotten the relationship piece of the puzzle, which to me is the puzzle. If you don't have it, you can't really get anything else done. Last month, I talked to Judge Thomas Griffith, who moderated this conversation between Justices Sotomayor and Amy Coney Barrett. He talked about the two women and their different approaches to interpreting the law and how those two women, those great leaders, showed that it doesn't have to get in the way of a good working relationship that, again, can prove out to be in the best interest of those they're trying to serve.
They have very different views about how to read the Constitution, how to read the statute. They have very different views, but we had them together for an hour at the National Governors Association where they spoke about the importance of collegiality on the Supreme Court. And the fun thing for me was to hear the stories of the personal interactions that they have one with another that has created genuine bonds of affection between one another. And it's not just the two of them. It's among most of them that they actually like one another. Now they can be they get really annoyed at opinions that they disagree with, but it's never personal.
And then finally, he brought up the story of Justice Breyer, who we referred to in this New York Times piece that he penned today, quoting Abraham Lincoln and how persuasion actually happens, and persuasion never happens by transaction. It's always by relation.
When Justice Breyer came to my class, and it was a very informal setting, he shared with the class a quote that I had not seen before, and I won't be able to quote it exactly, but it's from Abraham Lincoln in his temperance speech given to the Temperance Union. The gist of it was Lincoln says, you're not going to be able to persuade someone unless they're your friend. And, social scientists say that's true. That it's almost impossible to persuade somebody of anything. The only people who succeed at doing that is when there's a relationship formed and friendship's part of it. So we shouldn't confuse this with, lack of disagreement. Yeah. That's not the point.
Right.
It's how we disagree, and to get the contempt out of it and see that there's a human being who's taking views different than you do, and just because they're a human being, we ought to listen carefully and try and understand what they have to say.
So that art of persuasion actually begins with relationships, not just transactions. And if you want a good model, I think the justices on the Supreme Court are modeling that. In this same conversation, Amy Coney Barrett talked about her first days on the court and how stressed she was, how overwhelmed she was. And, of course, she was away from her family, her young children, and was stressed and worried about all of that. And she said it was Justice Sotomayor who just showed up in her office and had some Halloween candy for her to take home to her kids. And it's that kind of relationship building that I think we're lacking in so many places and spaces in our society today. And we have to get back to that. And so we're going to come back to this conversation later on in the program in hour number 2 to talk about this conversation and some of the examples that former Justice Stephen Breyer used that go back through the court and some of the great friendships and great experiences that are a good model for the rest of us of how you actually build friendship that enables you to build community and connection and ultimately lead us to a better society. All right, we'll step aside for a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next here on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
Say goodbye to morning traffic.
Good morning. Baby, it's a brand new day.
And hello to Rome, Barcelona, and Santorini. When you sail Europe with Norwegian Cruise Line, you wake up to a new city nearly every day. And we make it easy to get there with free airfare for second guest. Visit ncl.com, call your travel advisor, or 1-888-NCL-CRUISE. Norwegian Cruise Line. Ships registry the Bahamas and USA. Restrictions apply.
The rest of my life gonna start today.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots. And then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from PI, or go to piinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then PI Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
Devotion to country, service to Utah. Brent Orrin Hatch had a front row seat, watching his father serve our state faithfully in the Senate. A constitutional conservative and lifelong Republican, Brent Orrin Hatch is a champion for the rule of law. He's running for Senate to stop this lawless president from destroying our country from within. Hatch will fight to secure the border once and for all and take on Mexican drug cartels to halt the flow of deadly fentanyl. Brent Orrin Hatch knows the national debt is just as big a threat to national security. Hatch won't rest until the budget's balanced and won't cave to the big spenders in both parties. Pro-life, deeply committed to religious liberty, rock-solid Utah conservative. Brent Orrin Hatch for Senate. Paid for by Conservative Outsider PAC, which is responsible for the content of this advertising. Not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. www.copac.us.
Held over due to popular demand. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Save thousands on hot tubs and swim spas. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Utah State Fair Park. Hot tubs discounted 40 to 80% to the lowest possible price, starting at $29.99. Free professional delivery. Take possession tomorrow, next week, next month, or next season. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Shop over a dozen models of swim spas from 11 feet to over 19 feet. Swim spas offer low-impact exercise, active family fun, unsurpassed relaxation, and installation in one day. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Everything must go. Free parking, free admission. You can't afford to miss this. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Social Security is with you through life's journey from birth to retirement. As your life changes year to year, so do your needs. For over 80 years, Social Security has helped to meet your needs and is committed to improving access to the services that make a difference in your life. Today, you can verify your earnings, estimate your future benefits, apply for retirement, manage your benefits, and even change your address, all from the comfort of your home. Social Security's online services help put you in control with secure access to your information anytime, anywhere, allowing you to spend more time with family, friends, or simply just enjoying the day. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow. See what you can do online at socialsecurity.gov.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the earthquake that hit Taiwan today was almost 100 times stronger than the one that shook Utah in 2020. Second, Weber State University is building a fancy new W on the mountainside above the campus. Third, a Palestinian doctor walked out of a meeting with President Biden at the White House to protest the ongoing suffering of civilians in Gaza. Right now, 63 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
So what does it actually mean for a government to spend beyond its means? We talk about that a lot. When we say that governments are borrowing money, where are they getting that money? And what's happening as a result? Of course, overborrowing has become a really bad habit in a host of countries around the world. And the United States is one of those, to be sure. And the question then is, are we in company that we actually want to keep? Or should we be looking for a new group of friends? That's the big question there. As we've talked about it, of course, being $34 trillion in debt is no small thing. And if we do go back to the old adage, you can tell about a person by the company they keep, we might want to be thinking twice about who we're keeping company with and these other 50 countries who may be in the same boat in the same bandwagon when it comes to borrowing. Helping us break all of that down, of course, we always turn to J.D. Tuccilli for Reason. He is currently he's the contributing editor at Reason.com. And J.D., welcome back to the show. And should we be nervous about the company we're keeping? And if so, why?
We probably should be at least a little bit nervous. I mean, we knew that the U.S. government is spendthrift and has been for a long time. It hasn't balanced its books in over 20 years. But there's nobody else out there, if we were looking for a rescue, there's somebody else out there to fill that role. As much as the U.S. government is running up, its credit card, so is pretty much every other country in the world, every other government in the world, and they have been for years. The International Monetary Fund put out a report recently where they pointed out that advanced economies around the world are expected to reach borrowing levels of 120% of their GDPs by 2028, and developing economies are going to hit 80% by that same year. Because they were borrowing even before the pandemic, in relatively decent times. And then when the pandemic came in, they started funding their public health responses by borrowing even more money. And that was back when rates were relatively low. Now those rates are going up. They're locked into the debt they already ran up, and they're still borrowing. So this is a global credit spree. Everyone's out there running up a charge card. And when that debt comes due, it's going to come due for everybody.
Yeah. One of the things that you pointed out in your piece that really struck me today, you talk about these heavily indebted governments, and they're losing their ability to act as a backstop in a real crisis. Explain that for us.
Well, yeah, we think of if there's a run on a bank, okay, the government is the backstop, right? The government guarantees the deposits up to a certain level. And this is common in a lot of countries, either officially or unofficially. They want to keep their financial system functioning. And so if there's a run on a bank or banks in general, they'll provide liquidity, keep the bank standing so people don't lose their accounts, don't lose their prosperity, their money. But if the government is broke, and if the government is what causes the run of the banks, it causes the collapse of the financial system, it's in no position. It has no liquidity of its own to lend to the financial system to keep it on its feet. And there are no other lenders out there, except for other indebted lenders who are kind of still running up their own charge cards to act as that backstop. So our financial systems, if the banks themselves become rickety, are backed up by governments that are far more rickety and less reliable than the banks themselves are.
We can put that in the what could possibly go wrong category, but we'll save that conversation for another day. One of the other things that you pointed out that I think is important for all of us to understand is how that higher debt, one, just having the government that involved in the economy, give us the implications of that.
Yeah, I mean, governments borrow in the same lending markets as everybody else. And if you want to start a business, you go and you borrow startup capital. I mean, obviously, sometimes we come to the table with some money of our own, but we borrow money to either start a business or expand the business. And, you borrow at the going rate, but you're competing with all the other lenders that are out there. And governments are big borrowers, competing with all the other borrowers that are out there, I should say. And governments are big borrowers. And if they're all out there borrowing money at the same time, they start driving up the price of capital, and they start driving out the ability for private borrowers to compete with them for that money, to borrow that money. They make it more expensive for private borrowers to start their businesses, to expand their businesses, to do anything. They crowd out private investment. And this starts clamping down on economic growth. So if you're looking to economic growth to kind of grow your economy so that debt doesn't look so awful compared to all the all the activity that's going on out there, that possibility goes away, because more and more government borrowing means a slower and slower economic growth or recession. Your economy can actually start shrinking. It's certainly not going to get big enough to get you out of trouble with all of that debt, and you're going to be poorer than you would have been otherwise.
Yeah, and then finally, let's get to this whole idea of that higher debt being controlled, whether it's the U.S. or any of these other nations that are running up the charge card, so to speak, that it actually leads to lost prosperity. I think this is one, again, under the radar that we don't talk nearly enough about. Describe that for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big thing. We should point out that most of human history was really poor. But the last 30, 40 years, we saw this, this amazing surge, this growth out of poverty for much of the planet. We went from, in 1990, there were 2.01 billion people living under the poverty line, according to the World Bank. By 2018, I think the year was, that number had dropped, 2019, it dropped to 689 million. It's back up a little bit, though. It's certainly not back up to that 2.01 billion, but it's back up to about 712 million as of 2022, meaning that the world actually did get a little bit poorer. The reason we got richer is because property rights were secured, markets became freer. It's it's what the economist Deirdre McCloskey called liberalism in the free market sense. But we backed off of that. Economies have gotten more stodgy, more controlled. The state is playing a larger role, and it's competing with private borrowers again for the money that's out there. And I had looked at the Penn Wharton budget model, which is based at the University of Pennsylvania, and then they had estimated that for an additional $1 trillion in debt in 2019, that would decrease GDP for the United States by 0.28% in 2050, meaning that you're lowering the size of your economy over time as you run up your debt a little bit more. If you do that on a global scale, you see why we're getting more and more poor people again around the world after decades of growing prosperity with people emerging from poverty. It's bad government habits, bad borrowing habits, and they're crowding out the economic growth that made the world prosperous.
Yeah, crowding out that economic growth that really does create that upward mobility that does lift more people out of poverty, does fuel more of those. Everyone has an opportunity and a fair shot in terms of living their version of whatever dream it is. That becomes more and more difficult. J.D. Tuccille, always fabulous analysis. Everyone should go check out J.D.'s piece at Reason.com. It is with rising debt, the U.S. federal government is in bad company. These are conversations that we've got to get to. J.D., thanks for helping us walk through it today.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, and that's J.D. Tuccille. He's the best of the best in unpacking this, especially when it comes to our spending, our national debt, and what's underneath all of those numbers. I think we get a little bit numb to numbers like $34 trillion in debt, but we don't often look underneath that in terms of what is it inhibiting. It might be inhibiting prosperity. It might be inhibiting growth. because it's harder to have access if the government is so in the middle of the economy and are grabbing a lot of those funds that maybe would be deployed in the private sector. It has a big impact on the poor and the most vulnerable. They often get hit the worst in all of these kinds of scenarios, and it prevents government from doing what it is supposed to do, and that is in those times of crisis, that it is that backstop, whether it's a pandemic or an economic collapse. And it can't do that if you're $34 trillion in debt. Lots to think about, a lot of great analysis, as always, from J.D. Tuccilli. That wraps up hour number 1 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We'll step aside for some top-of-the-hour news, but don't go anywhere. We're going to do a little deeper dive into what's happening in the Middle East and look at it from all points on the compass to rethink maybe what we think we know about that part of the world. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top story this hour. The Utah Highway Patrol trooper who fell from an overpass while responding to a high-speed chase has now come home from the hospital. Trooper Steve Odie Meyer was deploying spikes on the road when he fell. He was in the hospital for 45 days. Weber State University plans to upgrade the Flaming W on the mountainside above its campus with new styling and technology. Right now it uses regular electric bulbs. The new system will be powered by solar panels with purple and white lights. A new release says the first W on the mountain was lit by 100 gallons of kerosene back in 1937. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The White House says President Joe Biden has been briefed on new cases of bird flu that forced the country's largest egg producer in Texas to stop production at its plants. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre at this afternoon's White House briefing.
One of the most important things for this administration is the health and safety of American public, and so that's how we take that very seriously. That's how we're going to operate. That is the number one thing here.
The affected poultry operations had to destroy millions of birds to stop the spread of the disease. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average up on the day 43, or down on the day 43 points. It's NASDAQ that was up on the day about 37. And our KSL weather looks like sunshine through the end of this day and then clouds building up tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
You know what's great about KSL's traffic coverage? Trained traffic reporters and real listeners.
Trading information and making the commute safer and faster for everyone.
Every 10 minutes on the 9s, we have you covered on KSL News Radio.
Hi, this is Julie from the Visitors Bureau in Logan, and things are looking up. The sun is out, and you should be too. Spring break is just around the corner, so book your stay, pack your bags, and come and play. We're kicking off spring break with the annual Original Baby Animal Days at the American West Heritage Center. You'll be spread out over 160 acres of beautiful scenery while you pet all the baby animals like lambs, goats, piglets, bunnies, and chicks. March 28th through the 30th also features exotic animals. You can see baby bears from Yellowstone Bear World April 3rd through the 6th, which is also when Baby Animal Days combines with the annual Mountain Man Rendezvous. Watch demonstrations like flint and steel fire starting, bullet making, and leatherworking and scrimshaw. Wait, do you even know what that is? It doesn't matter. Come and see at the American West Heritage Center. Logan has so many great things to do. Come for spring break or anytime you need a break. Vacation in Logan. Just get in the car. ExploreLogan.com. ExploreLogan.com.
Hi everyone, it's Congressman Blake Moore here. One of my top priorities in Congress is addressing our crippling national debt, which has surpassed $34 trillion for the first time in American history. For the sake of the next generation's ability to achieve the American dream, Congress must take action to rein in our government spending and more efficiently and responsibly spend our federal resources. I'm working hard in Congress to craft policy proposals that lower our spending and deficits. On the House Budget Committee, we introduced our budget resolution for fiscal year 2025. According to the Budget Committee majority, this resolution proposes no new taxes, grows the economy over 3 times faster than the debt, balances the budget in 10 years, and much more. We've also passed through committee common sense legislation that would require transparency to the American people about the state of our nation's finances so big government can be held accountable. It's an honor to bring Utah's sound fiscal policy to Washington, and I will continue to fight for the American family as we seek to give our children a better economic future. Paid for by the official funds authorized by the House of Representatives.
Advertising used to be simple. Your options were radio, TV, newspaper, and let's not forget the yellow pages. Now it seems like a tidal wave of options. Podcast, cable TV, streaming, OTT, CTV, audio networks, smart speakers. On top of that, you need digital marketing for your website along with SEM, SEO, display, video, YouTube, email, and all the social media platforms. Look, you're the expert in your business. Wouldn't it be nice to have an expert to market you? We are Bonneville Salt Lake, the local marketing and media company you know and trust. We reach customers across all digital and social platforms and have the reach of traditional advertising available as well. We find your customer anytime, any place, anywhere on any device here in Utah or anywhere in the world. We work to optimize your results with our in-house local team of experts, providing you with qualified leads, not just impressions. Contact Stephanie Palmer at KSL for a free consultation, including a complete digital audit with no obligation or cost to you. Email spalmer@ksl.com. That's spalmer@ksl.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have an accident eastbound on the 21st South Freeway, not far from I-215's West Belt, but it's out of traffic on the shoulder, not seeing any backups. Lagoon is looking for ride maintenance technicians. Lagoon offers excellent mechanical training programs with amazing career opportunities. Ride maintenance technician position is full-time and year-round. Details, visit lagoonpark.com/jobs. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, sunshine, 70 degrees today. Tomorrow, up to 73, but with clouds building up, then it'll be much cooler Friday and Saturday with a storm moving in. Right now, 64 degrees with sunshine. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
The conflict in the Middle East is changing every day. It continues to dominate so many headlines, and it is the cause of a lot of angst and anger and fear and frustration and a lot of opinion coming from all sides and all points of the compass. And so what we want to look at today is beyond those headlines and actually look at the Middle East from all points of the compass to see if we really know what we think we know when it comes to what's happening there. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is time to think again about what we think we know. And when it comes to the Middle East, it is complicated, it is difficult, it is historic, meaning this battle has been going on for centuries. And we want to just unpack it a little bit, and I want to do it in a little different way today because there are many opinions and there's a lot of emotion around all of this. And so I'm going to do what I like to do, and that is to ask you to suspend your opinion about President Biden or Bibi Netanyahu, Israel, Hamas, Gaza, Palestinians, war, and the list goes on and on and on. Because I just want to give you some data points and some perspectives. And then you can reassemble those and connect the dots. And so we're going to just present you with a lot of information and hopefully give you a path and a pattern so that you can connect the dots and make the news make sense for you. That's the job. And so as we look at everything going on, you could go down the laundry list of challenges and, quote, sides of the issue. You can start with the events of October 7th that you could actually go back historically to a host of other things that would take way more than this show could ever get to. But you can go back to October the 7th and the atrocities committed by Hamas, killing of over 1,000 Israelis, of course, the kidnapping and holding hostage, still over 100 that are being held hostage. We had the atrocity yesterday, the awful death of 7 aid workers who were inside of Gaza to do good, to make a difference, to help those that are struggling with hunger in particular, innocent civilians, many of them children. and they lost their lives in an attack and a raid by the Israeli forces. So there's that piece of the puzzle. You've got the Benjamin Netanyahu government, which has been the source of a lot of angst and frustration inside of Israel for a very long time, particularly over the last year. There were a lot of things that happened over the summer that we covered on this show in terms of changes that were being proposed to the judiciary that would really limit its influence and power and really upset the balance of power. We think that's an important thing, that separation of powers. And there were massive protests for weeks and weeks over the summer protesting the Netanyahu government in terms of these proposed changes to the judiciary. Of course, everything changed when October the 7th happened and the country came together, including a war cabinet made up of not just the friends of Prime Minister Netanyahu, but also many of his arch rivals who came together, a unity moment, a unity government in terms of prosecuting and dealing with the war and the situation following October 7th. It's important as we look at all of this, and I always caution, we have to be careful about conflating things. We have to be very careful about the yabbut-ism out there, yabbut this, yabbut that. We have to be careful of moral equivalence of a whole host of things. We have to look at the relationship with the United States and what the U.S. is and isn't doing, where it is supporting Israel, where it isn't, some of the conflicting messages that are going on there. And we'll come back to that in just a moment. You've also got a host of things just on the political front. Obviously, it's impacting President Biden in his reelection bid, as he has people who don't like the way he's supporting Israel or working through the process in terms of what's going on inside of Gaza. We had a UN vote where the United States abstained. That was infuriating to Israel that the U.S. let that go when the U.S. had proposed their own ceasefire that, of course, was blocked by China and Russia and other actors. You have all of the things going on since October the 7th. You've had over 165 attacks on U.S. service members and installations and assets in the Middle East, mostly by the Iranian-backed terrorists there in the region. And the list goes on and on and on as we try to look at all of this. And the question then becomes, how do we make any of this make sense? And how do we strike balance where balance is the right thing? Remember, balance is not always the goal. Balance is not always the right result in terms of all of this. So I actually want to go back to some of the words from John Kirby, Strategic Communications Director for the White House. And he gave some comments that I think struck a very interesting balance as it relates to the strike that killed these 7 aid workers from the World Central Kitchen.
We were outraged to learn of an IDF strike that killed a number of civilian humanitarian workers yesterday from the World Central Kitchen, which has been relentless in working to get food to those who are hungry in Gaza and, quite frankly, around the world. We send our deepest condolences to their families and loved ones. We've seen the comments from Prime Minister Netanyahu and from the Israeli Defense Forces about their commitment to conduct an investigation. We hope that those findings will be made public and that there is appropriate accountability held. More than 200 aid workers have been killed in this conflict, making it one of the worst for aid workers in recent history. This incident is emblematic of a larger problem and evidence of why distribution of aid in Gaza has been so challenging. But beyond the strike, what is clear is that the IDF must do much more to improve deconfliction processes so that civilians and humanitarian aid workers are protected. The U.S. will continue to press Israel to do more as well to ensure the safety of humanitarian workers, and will continue to do all we can to deliver this assistance to Palestinian civilians in Gaza.
So really interesting as you break all of that down. I think one of the interesting things that John Kirby pointed out, one was that the administration was outraged and furious. That was clear. He also went on to talk about the fact that the threat from Hamas to Israel and Israeli citizens continues to be great, that the Hamas fighters have not backed down at all. If anything, they've ramped up their rhetoric in terms of their goal, which is to wipe Israel off the map. That's an objective. Hard to negotiate with that. That's a pretty interesting space to be negotiating from. You've also got the sale of fighter jets from the administration to Israel. Again, another interesting point on the compass. And then, of course, John Kirby saying that there's not a free pass for Israel either in all of this, that they're not going to just turn a blind eye to things that need to be corrected or held accountable for. And so all of this is a challenge. All of this is difficult, but it requires us to look at things with less certainty, with more curious questions, and a willingness to listen a little bit different if we're going to get to the right result that will free hostages, that will create stability, that will help innocent civilians, and create a space for everyone to be able to thrive and to prosper. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
You know what I love about our friends at Hercules Credit Union is it's all about community and it's all about connection. You always hear me talking about if you just want transactions, you can go anywhere and get transactions. But if you want a relationship, go to Hercules Credit Union because they're going to be in your corner. They're always about growing stronger together. That's been their motto since 1946. So they've been doing this for a long time. Right now, they have two things that you really ought to be thinking about in terms of your relationship with Hercules Credit Union. Right now, they have a home equity line of credit, 3.99% for the first 6 months, no origination fees, easy access to that. Gold tier checking is something else that everyone should have. You enjoy the peace of mind of the ultimate identity theft protection, no monthly fees. You can get reward points for everyday purchases, and much more. It's always about the relationship, educating you, empowering you, so you can grow stronger financially as well. You can check out their locations in Taylorsville, Harriman, Riverton, or Salt Lake City, or as always with our friends at Hercules, you can just find them online at HerculesCU.com. That's HerculesCU.com.
It's spring, and it feels good.
Sunny and 71 on Thursday. Glorious. It's the warm before the storm.
By Saturday, it's cold enough that we could see the rain transitioning to snow even for valleys.
Well, for a couple of days anyway. Get a reliable KSL forecast for this week and conference weekend every 10 minutes on the 9s on KSL News Radio.
At Fisher Investments, we may seem like other money managers, but we're different.
Are you really that different than the rest of us?
We are. As a fiduciary, we always focus on what's best for our clients.
What services do you offer besides investing?
We have a team of specialists in financial planning, estate planning, and more.
Your clients rely on you for all that?
Yes, we ensure clients receive unparalleled service at every step of the relationship.
Okay, but you still sell commission-based products, right?
No, because we believe that's a conflict of interest. We prioritize service over sales goals.
So, then how do your fees work?
We have a simple and transparent fee that's a percentage of our clients' portfolios. So we do better when our clients do better.
Wow, we're more different than I thought.
At Fisher Investments, we're clearly different. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Jazz fans, secure your seats for the next NBA season by getting season tickets. Season ticket members get special perks like team store discounts, savings on in-arena concessions, and more. Be there for every moment during the 2024-25 season by calling or texting 801-355-DUNK today. 801-355-DUNK. Let's go, Jazz.
Hey guys, do you know your T level? Revive Men's Health here in Salt Lake City is helping you take that first step toward better health and enhanced intimacy with a free testosterone level test, exam, and consultation. Plus, for this month only, qualified patients can kickstart their treatment with a free supply of ED medication. Revive's customized ED treatments can provide immediate results, restore blood flow naturally, and even bring spontaneity back into your love life. With both in-person and telemedicine appointments available, plus free shipping directly to you, Revive takes the hassle out of treating low T and ED. Having an optimal testosterone level can change your whole life, and it starts with knowing your T level. Take that first step and book your free testosterone test, free exam, and free consultation, and kickstart your treatment with a free supply of ED medication this month only. Call Revive Men's Health Salt Lake City at 801-263-7777. That's 801-263-7777 or visit ReviveMen'sHealth.com.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. It drove me crazy. It got so bad, I couldn't do my homework. I couldn't concentrate. I absolutely refused to let any of my friends come to our house for any reason. I would have been humiliated if anyone found out how much my dad drank and how loud my mom screamed at him. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful. The only thing that happened is my mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. Her relationship with my dad really changed. I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I wanted to see if I could have a better relationship with my dad. I'm sure glad I did. If someone's drinking troubling you, you might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, a Utah Highway Patrol trooper who fell off a freeway bridge is finally back home after 6 weeks in the hospital. Second, Weber State University will have a new solar-powered flaming W on the mountainside above its campus. And third, one of the nation's biggest egg producers has had to destroy millions of chickens after an outbreak of bird flu. Right now, 64 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
We've talked to many great thinkers on this show about finding success and happiness in life. And, of course, in America, people from all walks of life can overcome challenges, find success, upward mobility. But can't we be doing more to increase the chances of success and that upward mobility, everyone's opportunity to pursue their own version of the American dream? How do we do that? Well, there's a fascinating and illuminating long-term study that has been released, led by the Future Families and Child Wellbeing Study. And we want to dig into that, and no one better to dig into that with than Lois Collins, a veteran journalist of the Deseret News, one of our favorites here on the show, and a brilliant piece, as always, Lois at Deseret.com. First, just give us the backstory of this study. This was a long-term, big bite, long chew kind of study.
And they're not done. It's 22 years old. They looked at hospitals, births, all the births basically, at 20 big cities, 75 hospitals. I'm going to fumble tongue this. Too many numbers in this study. Sorry about it. But they looked at births, and they oversampled births to who they considered disadvantaged people, and that was single moms. And the reason they did that is because those kids are going to grow up with maybe not two incomes, maybe not, two helping hands, to whatever. There are different situations and different reasons that people were single. But they weighted it so that they could catch them in a study where they're not always included. They are often left out. They don't answer surveys necessarily. And then they followed them for 22 years, and this is the seventh wave, and they're looking at the kids, and they're also looking at the parent, the primary caregiver, but they're saying, how are these kids doing?
Yeah, so now we're 22, these kids are now 22 years of age.
22 years old.
So give us some of the baseline in terms of what did they find out?
So what they looked at their education, they looked at their housing situation, they looked at health, COVID and how COVID impacted them. And basically what they found was that of these kids, 71% are working. A lot of them have benefits. Not all of them by any means are working full-time. About a third are full-time. About a fifth are more than full-time. So they're working, 60 hours, 50 hours. Fewer, just under half are working full-time of those that are working. They say that the vast majority have graduated from high school. A good number of them, so that's 2/3 already are out of high school, have a GED, which you would expect at age 22.
Yeah.
But 12% of them already have an associate's degree. 13% have a bachelor's degree. And they also are very aspirational. Only 20% of them are satisfied to just stop at high school. So they plan to go further.
Yeah.
And there's a thing that we talk about a lot called the success sequence, which is do things in the right order to give yourself a better chance at a stable, more financially secure, and probably emotionally secure life too. That says you graduate from high school. Most of these kids have. You get married. Well, you get married after you get your education and your job. and then you have kids after you get married. But one thing that was interesting in this, and something that Angela Rashidi, and who was not involved in this study, she's with American Enterprise Institute, really bright poverty scholar, and the lead person from Princeton on this study, it was Princeton and Columbia, said was that even if you blow that initial sequence, that's what you need to do first for the very best footing, but it's never too late to kind of change course and fix what you blew.
Yeah.
So they also found, aside from education, they found that 70% of the parents have homes or live in homes. Only 27% are in like an apartment or condo, and a few people are in other situations, including probably homeless. More than half of the kids are living in homes at age 22, but a lot of them are still living with their parents. They live with family members, grandparents, whatever. 41% are in an apartment or condo. 19% are living with a romantic partner. 57% are living with parents. So it's a lot of people living with parents. Good news on health. They're basically really healthy. Their parents are actually fairly healthy too, although you would expect parents are not quite as healthy as these young kids.
Right.
And they also said that they do really well on sleep. The kids do better than the parents on sleep. And here's the one thing that really stunned me. That is that the kids are less anxious than the parents are. Because we talk all the time. I mean, how many reams have I written on, kids and anxiety and depression, and the parents are pretty stressed. And part of that may have to do with family structure. Hard to say. A lot of pressures in the world today.
Yeah, no question. And in fact, I was going to ask you a follow-up on that in terms of the parents, and that particularly if it's a single-parent home, I think those anxiety levels go up in terms of finances, health, housing, all of these things that are included.
What the study numbers that I saw, and they, by the way, make this data available so you could download it and run your own numbers to see, but what the stuff that I saw didn't answer the question, how many of those parents who were single when the child was born are still single? And I would assume that a lot of them aren't. And I would assume that maybe some of them that were married are now single. And they've got young adults. They have probably other kids. They focus specifically on the children that were born in those, it was a 2-year period in those 75 hospitals where they tried to enroll everyone who came in the door. As a pregnant mom about to deliver in this study, and they were pretty successful at it. But it's kind of interesting to see the importance of making decisions that kind of set you up for stability, but it's also really, really good, I think, to see that if you have somehow not set yourself up right, you can set yourself up better. So I found this very interesting all the way through.
That was one thing that jumped out to me in your piece, was the fact that even those who didn't follow that success sequence, or maybe higher probability of having more challenges, more difficulty, it just proves out how resilient human beings actually are, and can actually get it right. Even if you make some mistakes along the way, I think this country is a redemption story in and of itself. And this kind of proves out that even those who start with a pretty tough row and maybe not the brightest of prospects can actually make it happen.
I would also point out one other thing, and that's the thing that kids need most in the world is an adult outside of their family as well who believes in them, whether it's a coach, a teacher, or whatever. So if you've got a kid who is in a disadvantaged home, you can step up and encourage them and maybe change more of a trajectory than you think.
Yeah, no question about it. And that civil society fills that space so importantly with coaches and teachers and neighbors and friends and all of that can be that other voice in a young person's life that can make all the difference. Lois Collins, always brilliant, fantastic writing, and the research is just astounding and really worth a deeper dive and a good look. Lois Collins, veteran journalist with the Deseret News. You can check out her piece at Deseret.com. As always, Lois, thanks for joining us in studio. Always great to have you.
My pleasure.
All right, again, that's Lois Collins from the Deseret News, and just a really important set of data. Again, it's so interesting to look at something over this kind of trajectory, to see going from birth to age 22 and what happens and what takes place is very instructive, very illuminating, and hopefully will influence not only what we do in terms of public policy and making sure we have the right strength and support systems in place there, but also what we do as a society, what we do in our homes, our families, our neighborhoods and communities can make all the difference as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and step aside for some bottom of the hour news. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Mom and Dad used to argue about everything, especially about Dad's drinking. My family went from totally crazy to quiet, calm, and even peaceful when Mom started going to Al-Anon family groups. I wanted a better relationship with Dad, so I asked Mom if she would take me to her Al-Anon meetings or to Alateen. I'm sure glad I did. Is someone's drinking troubling you? You might be surprised at what you can learn in an Al-Anon or Alateen family group from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-ALANON or go to alanon.org.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bonas. KSL's top local story this hour. After the partial demolition of the old Fifth Ward church building, Salt Lake City Council is looking at increasing fines in violations for historic buildings. KSL News Radio's Amy Kobe reports.
The council is looking at several amendments to tighten control of historic buildings and districts. One would bar developers from knocking down anything without approval. And instead of just fines, which they noted in their meeting isn't doing enough, they'd also keep the developer from building anything new on the property for 25 years. These amendments were already in the works, but were moved up to this month on the agenda after that Fifth Ward building demolition.
The council is planning a public hearing on this issue in a couple of weeks. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Amazon is laying off workers in its cloud computing division. Several hundred people will be losing their jobs in sales, marketing, and global services. That comes after mass layoffs over the past couple of years that reduced Amazon's total workforce by about 27,000. The company says now it's still hiring for other roles in the company. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing the trading day down 43 points. The NASDAQ was up 37 points. The S&P 500 up by about 5. And our KSL weather. Enjoy the sunshine while it's here. The clouds come in tomorrow. That's next. KSL News Time, 2:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Well, hello, it's me again. And like me, I'll bet you're ready for spring and a little green lawn again. I've got a tip. Don't spend a fortune hiring a lawn care company. Save some money and do it yourself. And here's how. Go to J&J Garden Center in Layton and purchase their simple, color-coded 5-step fertilizer system that covers up to 10,000 square feet and will rejuvenate your lawn for just $199.98. And nobody beats J&J's price. So for a lush, healthy green lawn, come and try J&J Garden Center's 5-step fertilizer system. I promise you won't regret it. Take the Layton Parkway exit, Main Street to Gentile, then within 2 miles. You've got to see it to believe it. You really do.
Country grown to your home, J&J Garden Center.
Attention, Dave's Bernina in Provo and St. George just finished a 3-day event in Vernal and is now offering these just out of the box, brand new Bernina machines at tremendous discounts with full warranties. Save thousands on the Bernina sewing, quilting, and embroidery, $735, $790, and $770 Kaffe machines, featuring unmatched quality and ease of use. Many of these machines have special offers and come with free gifts with purchase. We also have a few L890 sergers and a sit-down Q16 quilting machine. Hurry in, quantities are limited. All other exciting Bernina machines in our stores are on sale too. Plus, we'll have discounts on Bernina accessories and zero-interest financing options. Come to Dave's Bernina now at 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo while supplies last. Dave'sBernina.com.
At Social Security,
We are always thinking of ways to save you time and make things easier. That's why we created My Social Security. Opening a My Social Security account gives you secure access to your personal record and interactive tools tailored for you. You can see if you are eligible to receive benefits, view spousal benefit estimates, and compare retirement benefit estimates at different ages or dates when you want to start receiving benefits. Already receiving benefits? Use your account to change your address, set up or change direct deposit, get a proof of income letter, and more. In most states, you can also request a replacement Social Security card. Save time. Go online. Open a My Social Security account at ssa.gov/myaccount. Social Security, securing today and tomorrow.
Produced at U.S. taxpayer expense.
Traffic and weather together, brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Well, I don't have anything reported, but traffic is definitely slowing down southbound I-15 approaching 7200 south. Watch for some delays there. Overall, though, looking good on the rest of your Valley freeways. The best kept secret is this is the pass. It's a pass for fun for everyone. Now through April 30th, save $20 off every annual pass level. 362 days of fun. Visit thisisthepass.com. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
Our KSL weather, sunshine and 70 degrees today, then tomorrow 73, but the clouds are building up and it'll be much cooler Friday and Saturday with a storm moving in. Right now, 64 degrees and sunny. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, despite some of the indicators in terms of improvement in the economy, many Americans are still just feeling the effects of a very turbulent economy and some messaging maybe coming out of the administration that isn't congruent with what they're talking about around their kitchen table. And in particular, that's hitting things like college education costs. People are feeling the pinch and the stress of all of that. Of course, an important component for many families here is the free application for federal student aid, or FAFSA, is it's affectionately called. And as always, we want to look at what's going right, what's going wrong, what needs to be done better, and how's it actually impacting real people, real students in this case. Emma Camp is joining us, and she is the assistant editor at Reason Magazine, and Reason.com. And a great piece, as always, Emma, talking about another glitch in the system and the impact on some of the financial aid for a big number of students. Give us the rundown.
Okay, so to start off with what's happening with the FAFSA, the Education Department has really bungled it this year. So in 2020, Congress passed a law that required the FAFSA to be streamlined, to make it a simpler form to fill out. That sounds like a great idea, right? Well, the Education Department seems to have had a hard time doing this. So they had a really long delay in getting the FAFSA form out. Normally it comes out in October. This year it didn't come out until New Year's Eve, and they didn't extend that deadline for families. And almost immediately when students and families started filling it out, they started facing these really infuriating technical glitches. You know, people were having a hard time logging in, they were getting locked out, the form was having all of these kind of nonsensical technical bugs, and a lot of them were affecting people really long term. So just until, a couple weeks ago, if you have a parent without a Social Security number, which is mostly students who have an undocumented parent, you couldn't fill out the form at all. And just recently, the Education Department announced that they miscalculated the estimated family contributions for 200,000 students who had reported their own financial assets, things like cash savings or investments. And this is really putting people's college decisions at risk, right? The FAFSA form is required if you want to get federal grants and loans, and it's required by the vast majority of colleges if you want to get financial aid.
Yeah, and so let's dig into some of those components. So one, not surprising, things don't tend to run on time when they're making those kinds of changes in government programs or systems or processes. But it's stunning to me that they didn't get this done, not in the fall, but it went all the way to New Year's Eve. But there was no change in the deadline. That had to be infuriating for a lot of folks.
Oh, yes, for sure. I'm sure there's going to be many families who aren't able to get the form in on time, especially families that have other issues that have kept them from being able to fill out the form until recently.
Yeah, and let's talk about some of those downstream impacts as it relates. You mentioned it briefly, but I want you to unpack that for us a little bit in terms of the requirements for those who want to get some of that federal aid or federal grants, having to really suspend or put off making some of those crucial decisions.
Yeah, this is really going to throw a lot of people's plans up in the air. This form is absolutely required, like you said, if you want to get federal grants and loans. And also for, a lot of people, most people apply to multiple colleges, you get different financial aid offers. And most of those colleges rely on the FAFSA when deciding how much financial aid to offer to students. And, college decision day is May 1st, if I remember correctly. Parents and students want that information before May 1st so they can decide, are they going to choose the cheaper school? The way this is going, by the time people have to decide where to start their education, they're not going to have all of the really important financial information that they need.
Yeah, and obviously that's going to impact a lot of things, including how some of those schools function rolling into the fall. If there's not a certainty in terms of who's actually coming and showing up, what those needs are. I want to actually get to the parent portion that you just alluded to. The students not being able to decide on May 1st is one big deal, but parents not really knowing, hey, are we going to have to pick up another job, or are we going to have to sell some assets or change some behavior in order to make ends meet, are just not going to be able to make those kinds of decisions.
Right. This is so infuriating for university administrators who just don't have the manpower to individually calculate how much financial aid they're going to give to every student. It's infuriating to parents. And some schools, there's an article in the Wall Street Journal about this. They're already reporting that they're getting fewer FAFSA forms from students.
And so then as you look at it, is there anything in the go forward? Are we hearing anything from the Department of Education in terms of any tweaks or streamlining or extension of dates or anything happening there? Or is it just kind of hunker down and everyone's just got to hold on?
I think that this year is probably just going to go down as, one of the great government website bungles. I think of the launch of the Affordable Care Act, that website, technical issues that sort of went down in history. And I think they'll probably have their act together a bit more next year. The infuriating thing about this is this started out as a way to make government better, right? Why should it be so difficult to fill out this form that millions of families have to fill out? The way they changed the form, it imports information directly from the IRS. That sounds great. But the problem is, if you're going to make these changes, you need to make them right. And it probably would have been better to take another year and have next year's form be really good than to cause so much frustration for all of these families.
Yeah, and I'm going to quote you on that, Emma, for the GGB, the Great Government Bungle of 2024. So we'll quote you on that. And I want to get one other little piece of insight before I let you go, and that is this another one of those cases where what was passed in Congress, again, good intention, probably a great bumper sticker title of the bill, but not enough in there to actually say, here's how this has got to be done and executed. The agency then takes it over and clearly didn't have all the ducks in a row to actually be able to deliver.
Yeah, I'm not precisely sure. So the requirement for the FAFSA to be streamlined was part of a really big appropriations bill. But I imagine it was more likely to be one of those situations where it was less specific. And in many ways, that makes sense, right? The people who already run the FAFSA would probably know how to best streamline it. The problem is that they didn't end up doing that properly.
All right. Fantastic perspective as always. And Emma Camp, of course, is the assistant editor at Reason. Emma, thanks so much for making time for us today.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Again, big thanks to Emma for helping us break all of that down. It is one of those just classic things in terms of government and what does get done, and then the inflexibility And so you can say and justify a mistake here, a challenge there, a difficulty. That happens in every business. And so we shouldn't point out government just because they're government. I think the bigger question is the ability to say, you know what, we made a mistake, or we weren't ready, or we did encounter a glitch that we hadn't accounted for. And so let's move the deadlines back a little bit to accommodate for that. And that's where the agency just said, nope, the date's the date, and we'll just go from there. So that inflexibility within an agency, I think, can be more problematic than any mistake the agency might actually make. And the real bottom line is, to what end? And the to what end and who do we work for, to me, is the bigger question. Because if you're actually working the constituents, the people who are going to receive it, you should make sure that they can actually do it. All right, we'll step aside for one last break. More Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
When the weather warms up, it's like a stampede, except instead of dust stirred up by hundreds of hooves, it's a cascade of phone calls to Advanced Window Products. This is Jeff Kaplan. Soon as the sun shines and the snow's gone, people want new windows and frames from Utah's #1 custom window maker, and the wait for installation grows longer. But right now, you can get near the front of the line by calling for a quote and get $2,500 off when you purchase 10 windows or more. That's on top of the incredible savings for the highest quality double-pane windows and frames, any style, any color. See, at Advanced Window Products, they actually build the windows here in Utah, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. There's no middleman, and they can pass the savings on to you. They even offer buy now, pay later. So get in before the wait grows longer and get the $2,500 off. Get your new windows this spring. Make the call. Advanced Window Products, 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100. Or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
This week's movie show brought to you by My Hearing Center. Schedule a hearing evaluation and be entered to win a set of premium hearing aids by tuning in Friday from 10 to 1.
I'm getting vaccinated with Prevnar 20, a Pfizer vaccine.
So am I, because I'm at risk for pneumococcal pneumonia.
If you're 19 or older with chronic conditions like asthma, diabetes, COPD, or heart disease, or are 65 or older, you are at increased risk for pneumococcal pneumonia. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Prevnar 20, pneumococcal 20-valent conjugate vaccine. It can help protect you against pneumococcal pneumonia in just one dose. Even if you've already been vaccinated with other pneumonia vaccines, Prevnar 20 may help provide added protection. Prevnar 20 is approved for adults to help prevent infections from 20 strains of the bacteria that cause pneumococcal pneumonia. Continued approval may depend on a supportive study. Don't get Prevnar 20 if you've had a severe allergic reaction to the vaccine or its ingredients. Adults with weakened immune systems may have a lower response to the vaccine. Side effects include pain and swelling at the injection site, fatigue, headache, muscle, and joint pain. For full prescribing information, please call 1-855-213-2138 or visit Prevnar20.com.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you with professional-grade industrial supplies. Count on real-time product availability and fast delivery. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Lowe's knows pros need the right tools for every job. That's why we sell the largest in-store selection of Klein tools anywhere. Find new items like the self-leveling green laser level for just $159.98. Plus, shop the Connect Pass-Through Socket Set for $49.98, which you can only find at Lowe's. Shop Klein Tools in-store and online today, because Lowe's knows tools. Lowe's knows pros.
Any Hour Services free furnace sale is going on right now. If you haven't scheduled your free estimate yet, do it now. Call Any Hour Services today or schedule online at anyhourservices.com.
Held over due to popular demand. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Save thousands on hot tubs and swim spas. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas. Utah State Fair Park. Hot tubs discounted 40 to 80% to the lowest possible price, starting at $29.99. Free professional delivery. Take possession tomorrow, next week, next month, or next season. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Shop over a dozen models of swim spas from 11 feet to over 19 feet. Swim spas offer low-impact exercise, active family fun, unsurpassed relaxation, and installation in one day. The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Everything must go. Free parking, free admission. You can't afford to miss this. It's a major manufacturer's liquidation of hundreds of in-stock spas.
Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
The Hot Tub and Swim Spa Sale. Utah State Fair Park. Visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Jazz fans, secure your seats for the next NBA season by getting season tickets. Season ticket members get special perks like team store discounts, savings on in-arena concessions, and more. Be there for every moment during the 2024-25 season by calling or texting 801-355-DUNK today. 801-355-DUNK. Let's go, Jazz.
Attention, Dave's Bernina in Provo and St. George just finished a 3-day event in Vernal and is now offering these just out of the box, brand new Bernina machines at tremendous discounts with full warranties. Save thousands on the Bernina sewing, quilting, and embroidery, 735, 790, and 770 Cafe machines, featuring unmatched quality and ease of use. Many of these machines have special offers and come with free gifts with purchase. We also have a few L890 sergers and a sit-down Q16 quilting machine. Hurry in, quantities are limited. All other exciting Bernina machines in our stores are on sale too. Plus, we'll have discounts on Bernina accessories and zero-interest financing options. Come to Dave's Bernina now at 691 East St. George Boulevard and 2017 North 550 West in Provo while supplies last. Dave'sBernina.com.
Get up to a 20% bonus and up to 12% per year guaranteed for your retirement income. These guarantees are too good to pass up and can give you lifelong income security. Up to 20% upfront just for opening an account and up to 12% per year guaranteed. Call Trajan Wealth today. 801-899-7600. That's 801-899-7600. Or visit TrajanWealth.com.
Guarantees are based on the claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, the Salt Lake City Council looking at ways to make protection stronger for historic buildings. That follows the partial demolition of the 5th Ward Meeting House on 3rd West. Second, Amazon laying off more workers in its cloud services division, still hiring for other positions. And third, the Coast Guard has begun removing shipping containers from the cargo ship that knocked down the Key Bridge in Baltimore. They're hoping to refloat the ship and get it out of the way. 64 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program, I actually want to go back to a conversation we started in hour number 1 of the show today, talking about the Supreme Court. There was a brilliant opinion piece in the New York Times today by former Justice of the Supreme Court, Stephen Breyer. And we went back to some conversations that we had in terms of this friendship on the court and what does it mean? Why is it instructive? Why is it helpful to all of us? And why should it help us have a little more confidence maybe in the institution of the court, as well as serving as a model for how we might actually have a little more trust and confidence in each other, in our communities? And so as we went through this, it really is a great piece. You should go check this out at the New York Times today. And in Justice Breyer's term and his tenure on the court, he said that we could listen to one another and increase the chances of agreement and compromise. He said the court worked together to serve the best needs of the nation. And he said if justices who disagree so profoundly can do so respectfully, perhaps it's possible to do the same in a politically divided country. But then the part I want to get to is these friendships on the court that we don't hear nearly enough about. These are opinionated folks. These are smart people. These are people who, as Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, when we disagree, our pens become very sharp. in our arguments, but they never become personally sharp. So in this piece by Justice Breyer, he talked about some of these very interesting connections. One of those was between Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, who, of course, was the first woman appointed to the court, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was the second. And Justice Breyer remembered being a little surprised when they were in Europe, meeting with several European judges, and suddenly Justices O'Connor and Ginsburg were gone. They had disappeared. And they were asked, where did these two run off to? Why are they not in this meeting? And it turns out that they went off together to find suitable women's collars for their robes. And they actually found some in Europe. And, of course, Justice Ginsburg wore those for the rest of her time on the court, became part of her brand and her fashion statement. Also interesting, and Justice Breyer pointed this out, in terms of some of these casual conversations that they would have on the court, that they would do things together. He talked about how he and Justice Scalia would often go and speak to high school students together or law school students together or other audiences about the court. And he said no one was ever confused that the two of them had vastly different views of the court, the role of the court, the interpretation of the law and the Constitution, and they were friends. And so there were a few things that are sort of the unwritten rules of the court that I think are worth noting for all of us. These were kind of the unwritten rules of the court. And one of those was that when they would be in conference together, so the case would have been heard and now they're conferring about what the decisions will be. And when they meet in conference, they would proceed in order of seniority. And no one was allowed to speak twice until everyone had had a chance to speak once. And so that way, each member, each of the 9, would have the ability and know with confidence that they were going to have a chance to speak before things were decided and that things moved forward. And I love the fact that Justice Breyer pointed out that this rule of everyone getting to speak once before anyone got to speak a second time, he said that was very helpful to him because he was the junior justice on the Supreme Court for 11 years. So imagine being the junior guy for 11 straight years. That's an interesting thing. But yet he was able to thrive in that setting because he knew he would have a chance to speak, that he would be able to share his thoughts and opinions on a particular case. They also had an interesting thing that usually after they would have conference, they would have lunch together. And that was an important part. Justice Breyer also noted something that I thought was a really stunning statement. He said in his 28 years on the court, not once in his 28 years did he say he heard a voice raised in anger in that conference, nor were there any snide or personal remarks ever made. I don't know very many places that would be true. But the fact that that was the case, and that was his experience on the court for 28 years, that there weren't voices raised in anger, even though they've all admitted that sometimes their colleagues drive them crazy. But yet, no snide remarks, no voices raised, no contempt. And the motto and the mantra was really, yeah, we may disagree on case number 1, but we might be the strongest of allies on case number 2 today. And because of that, there was never any horse trading that we so often see in our politics. It was not a, well, if you help me out with this one, I'll help you out with that one. That was not the case. Everything was seen on the basis of the merits. So all of that to say, I think the key to the court and what we need to understand about the court is it is based on those relationships. We talked earlier in the show about the fact that so many of the things that we do nowadays are simply transactions, including social media, which I know many people think that's their connection to people. It's really not. A like is a transaction. A lot of the things that we consume is a transaction. You have to have a whole different framework and a whole different focus if you're going to build a relationship. And that's what the members of the court, never perfect, don't always get it right, but they have a process for building and sustaining relationships that always enables them to have the possibility of a better conversation that might lead to a compromise, and it might not. And when it doesn't, it's okay. But we have to get to that space. And I think this confidence that seems to be waning in the court because of the politics of the nation, I think we got to get, again, back past the headline, underneath the hood, so to speak, and look at how does the institution actually run. And institutions that run on relationships can get you to better places and spaces than those that are just based on transactions. And I think what the justices at the United States Supreme Court do in terms of friendship and relationship are worth celebrating and worth emulating, by the way. All right, that wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. Thanks for joining us. I'm Boyd Matheson. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something today that makes a difference.